So we have emotional moments and we have funny moments in this chapter, which pretty much is the standard setup for almost any One Piece chapter. There's funny moments, there's sad moments, there's serious moments, and then there's some random thing that happens that, like, this changes everything, as in what happens with the last chapter. And we know about Jay Garcia's Saturn now. So this is just kind of my thoughts over what happened in the last chapter. In chapter, it'd be 1074 for One Piece. Going over a few things that I caught that are like references or what they made me think of and things like that. There may be another video coming out soon that kind of is partially a little bit based on some stuff that we get in this chapter, but I haven't quite made that decision yet. Well, actually, I have 2 videos in the work that are kind of based around certain things in this chapter. So, first off, we have the cover story, which is literally just Judge, Caesar, and Queen all fighting over who's basically the second best scientist. So it's like kids arguing with each other and coming to blows over who's the parent's favorite, or in this case, second favorite, because we know that like Vegapunk is like this golden child that can do no wrong to a degree, and like kind of the eyes of the public, which with what we found out about like the Ebel Prize in the last chapter, and some other bits that we saw with Vegapunk and how he's, you know, this like world-renowned scientist and things like that. And then we get just like Judge, Caesar, and Queen just like arguing over like, no, mine are better. No, my viruses are better. No, my fake devil fruits are better. No, my weapons of death and mass destruction are better. Just like all this other stuff going back and forth, and it's just like children. Oh God. And I'm assuming we're just kind of like watching through like this brief flashback for this, and we'll get like a little bit more, like we'll see like the government coming in and like breaking up Mads, and like Vegapunk going with them, and then like Queen going off to join Kaido at some point, and then Caesar going off to like work with Vegapunk to a degree as like one of the scientists, and then have like Judge go off and start building up the Germa. So we might get like a slight timeline on that. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, just like those 3 grown men squabbling like children is hilarious. Moving through the chapter, and I'm not touching on every single thing in the chapter. I'll leave that for the people that pay a lot closer attention to stuff, but this is just stuff that it reminded me of. Then we get this new version of the Pacifista, which is the Mark III. Because we saw way back, of course, during the, Kuma is the, Mark 0, PX 0. Then, of course, we have like the first gens and the second generation Pacifistas. This is not like the third generations that we've seen with these, which are, just even stronger than the ones that were at Marineford 2 years ago and such. They also have this bubble shield that they can create, which I just think is kind of cool. I just think that that's really like a useful thing to have, because it's like you can absorb the attack onto the bubble, and then it just like pops or whatever onto the bubble shield, and then you can just like disperse it, and it's not going to like cause a huge amount of repercussions and such. So that was a good idea. I like that. I went back and actually checked to see if like these were the same Pacifista that we saw, that were like the one that seemed to be like the police officer way back that, Luffy and Bonnie and Jinbei and Chopper dealt with. That tried to accuse them of stealing clothes and food, which is technically not wrong. Technically that's correct. They did steal it. But I looked and it's like, it's not the same one. That one's not dressed up, that one's dressed up as a police officer. These ones are not. I just wanted to double check that. But I'm like, these ones are probably more the combat versions of that one. That one either might have just been like a specific one that they made that was based off of Kuma, or that one might have just been like an earlier model or something like that. Or it could be the same thing. It's just that one's dressed up like a police officer. But we see all of these other ones, and their job is to go and basically stop the CP0 agents that are all there. We see Sentomaru. He seems to be doing better, at least a little bit better. His wounds are being treated by the different people that work there with Vegapunk and such. And they probably know him a fair amount. Sentomaru probably wanders around, Vegapunk's area quite a bit, around Egghead Island at times. So he's probably familiar with a lot of the scientists, and they're probably pretty familiar with him and such. You know, we see him at least getting treated, so he's at least not dead. And of course, he's like, you know, he's giving the orders to the Mark threes, that their orders, there's like 50 of them. Their orders are like, your mission basically is to make sure that your creator escapes the island safely, that Vegapunk escapes safely. Which, you know, Sentomaru is just like, I guess I'm betraying the government now. This is what happens on my day off. This is what I get for taking a day off. Everything, it's like that concept where it's just like you show up at your work and you were like gone on a vacation, and you get back and nothing has gotten done, and like everybody is like, oh, thank God you're back, I need your help. And it's just like, am I the only thing that keeps this place running? Wow, I need a raise. And better benefits. So we get kind of that's like the thought on like Sentomaru's mind. I'm like, I can't get one day off without apparently the entire island getting attacked and exploding. Okay, back to work. It's just kind of like the vibe Sentomaru's giving off at that point in time. But one of the, we see that, and like we also get like the Mark III pacifistas dealing with like a bunch of the government agents, with the CP0 agents. I hear the ringing in the hallway. You opened the door yourself. Come on, you can come up. Yay, we got a puppy. See, he's doing better, but he's still whining quite a bit. Hi. Hi. You can lay down. I'm not opening the window yet. I can open it later, but not right now. Oh, don't you mind. You're fine. I'm trying to talk about a giant robot bear thingy. That kind of reminds me of the Borg in this case. So into that comment. So we have it that, and I don't know if this is the 100% direct translation of the chapter, but it's the translation that I read, that it's resistance is futile. And I'm like, we're going back to the Borg. Great. I have no idea if Oda is actually a fan of Star Trek or not, but I'm sure he's at least somewhat aware of the Borg. So there's that get thrown in there. But then he also said, it also is like, surrender and proceed with me to Factory B. I'm like, I want to know what's in Factory B, but I also don't want to know. And that gave me Cyberman flashbacks from Doctor Who. Because, you know, the Borg just assimilate everything and like take like the good things that like that culture, like the technology advancements and knowledge of that culture. The Cybermen in Doctor Who, Don doesn't know what the Cybermen are. They're in Doctor Who. They're one of the most famous villains alongside the Daleks. But the Cybermen are humans that have basically been, turned into robots. Where the Borg are cyborgs. They're closer to cyborgs than they are to an actual robot in most cases. And what happens is the Cybermen, you will be, resist and you will be deleted is basically the answer. And they turn humans into more of them, into more Cybermen. And there tends to be factories that are involved in this, and you're not given a choice, and if you resist, they kill you. Like, no. So those are what those made me think of over the years, with, Doctor Who and everything. Also, over the years, the Cybermen have had different designs, obviously, because they have, like, this evolution in regards to, A, costumes and special effects that they can do on the different aliens, on the Cybermen, but also B, that's, like, showing them advancing in their technology over the years. So there's like all these different variations of the cyborgs, and there's different variations of the pacifistas over the years. So I just wanted to point that out. Talking about Sentomaru, he wants to make sure that Vegapunk gets the chance to leave safely, which, okay, he's like, okay, so betraying the world government is now on my list of things to do today. And then we cut back into the the lab dome where we have, Luffy and the others are all in there. And Luffy had apparently run around so much trying to find Vegapunk because he's Luffy and it does everything to the nth degree. Had been running around trying to find Vegapunk, and he broke his hover boots. So the hover boots need warranties. Also, they need to be stress tested by Luffy. Just so you know, Vegapunk, just mark that down. So we have that funny bit. Luffy's just exhausted from running around so much, which is funny in and of itself. And then we have Zoro and Brook and Stussy end up, coming up to the lab sphere. So they're there with the crew, and like, Zoro's in the future tech and everything. Like, I think I like Brook's outfits because Susie's just pretty much looks the way that like Nami and Robin's are, with like the top covered and then like a pair of underwear. Unless they change it and it's just like, no, she's in pants. But that doesn't seem to be the case with Nami and Robin, so we'll see how that goes. But I just wanted to comment on Brook's outfit because Brook's outfit, he has like this astronaut helmet type thing on that looks like it's like protecting his afro, which I just find so adorable and I love it. I just wanted to point that out. I'm just like, yep, I like that. Vegapunk's, whoever fabricated the clothing machine and comes up with the designs for it, someone must have come through that had like an afro or like really big hair at some point in time, and they're just like, yeah, I like your afro, I'm gonna make you something that'll like protect your afro, and now Brooke's the one that gets to wear it. I'm just like, yep, I like that. And Zoro is just like, wait, I thought we were leaving. I thought that was the plan, was for us to get the old man and leave at this point in time, or at least that's what I was informed of when I woke up from my nap after the giraffe attacked me. Also, we brought the giraffe and the leopard and they're asleep, or at least hopefully knocked out. And like this big spread, and we see a bunch of stuff. We see the Atlas has been fixed, so that's good. Atlas seems to be doing much better. And then we also find out that it's the first time we're kind of getting a full size comparison for York in regards to the rest of them, where she's not laying down and she's in her slim form, and she's actually very, very tall. She's actually very large. I don't know if she's quite as tall as Atlas, but she's definitely taller than Lilith and Shaka and those ones, which makes sense for her to be on the larger scale of things, because she is the one that does all of the eating and everything like that for the other Vegapunks. So hopefully she's her being bigger means that she can eat more. I'm still trying to figure out how that logic works, but okay. Also, I kind of want her metabolism, or at least a fraction of her metabolism. So we have that stuff, and then there's also like Nami like kicked Lucci, like he's still hopefully out cold. Hopefully, him and Kaku are still out cold during this time frame. And Nami like kicks him. It's like, I didn't think we'd ever see these guys again kick. Like, oh, you better hope they're asleep, Nami, because if they wake up and Lucci finds out you kicked him, he's not going to be a happy cat. And like all the rest of the Straw Hats are like, it's just like, well, Shaka's like explaining them. Was like, well, we can't find Vegapunk. We can't find the Stella body, even though all of these monitors are able to like look over everything. Luffy's like, all of those monitors can see everything, and you let me run around this entire building. We trying to find Vegapunk and Nami. Or Vegapunk and Bonnie. He's like, well, we know where not Bonnie is. She's over here. Okay, that's helpful. So we at least know Bonnie's still on the island. I'll get to Bonnie in a minute. But I'm just like, okay, that's interesting. It makes sense that Vegapunk has the entire island monitored, in case someone needs help with an experiment and they want to ask him something, or Vegapunk just needs to check on something, or whatever the case may be. That makes perfect sense. But they're like, well, because the Seraphim ended up causing some problems. Also, we don't see the Seraphim in this chapter, so don't know exactly what they're waiting for. I mean, like, we know that Edison got them the order to not attack, to stop attacking the Straw Hats. So either the Seraphim are just like waiting, or hopefully they took the authority chips off of Kaku and Lucci. Hopefully they took those authority chips away from them, so at least they can't give the satellites any order, or can't give the Seraphim any orders. Hopefully. Also, they didn't get new clothes. They're just knocked out and laying on the ground. Zoro and Luffy are like, yeah, this kind of brings us back to Water 7. Yeah, I wonder how Iceberg is doing. And Luffy remembered someone. Okay. Although, admittedly, Luffy at least did remember that there was a thing called Pluton that Frankie burned up the blueprints for way back when. So, Luffy pays attention at times. Also, Iceberg was very nice to them and helpful in the end. So, Luffy remembering Iceberg actually makes sense. Um, yes, it does. Don't look at me like that. But so we get like this stuff where we see like them all interacting with each other, and not they're like, oh well, I guess we all better go form a search party and go look for Vegapunk. And Nami's like, well, let's go search for Vegapunk and treasure, and she's just like wandering off, just like, yep, that tracks. Nami's gonna go look for treasure. Yep, I can believe it. Future treasure, like she wanted earlier. Which is just funny. I don't know what she's gonna find. We'll see. Again, I still kind of want to see what Vegapunk finds out about Zeus and what he says about that. I still kind of want to find out about that, what one of them thinks about Zeus. And then Zoro's like, yeah, I guess I'll help too. And everybody, like, Sanji literally holds Zoro back. And he's like, yeah, no, you're not going to go look for anybody, because if you get lost, who's going to find you? It's like, if you get lost, who's gonna find you? And Chopper and Robin are like, they just agree. They're like, yeah, no, you stay here, Zoro. And they literally, it's like, they force Zoro to sit down on the couch next to where Luffy is. And it's just like, you stay here and wait with Luffy, because it's like, so it was like flashbacks of like kids at the department store being like put down in like a certain area. It's just like, you stay here while your parents shop, or like whatever the case was. I remember, going shopping with your parents. It's like, sometimes it's just like, oh god, I am so bored, and it's like your parents are like, so. When I was growing up, my parents used to shop at this place in Lincoln that's called Sun Mart. It's not really around anymore. My dad worked for the company, as in like he worked at the store, and we tended to do a fair amount of grocery shopping there, which makes sense because we got employee discount. And like a lot of them knew my dad, knew who I was, and my mom, and stuff like that. But there's multiple times where it's just like, my mom's having to be there shopping, or my dad's there shopping, and it's just like, okay, you go sit in this aisle that has like where like the little like the dollar toys are or whatever. You stay here and play with the little plastic dinosaurs while we go shop, and we'll come back. Just like, okay. And like, that happened. Or take your book, sit and read while your mom's trying to find clothes, or whatever the case is. If you're at like a J.C. Penney's or something. But like, that's the vibe that this gives off. Also, I agree, because the first thing that popped into my mind when Zoro's like, oh, well, I guess I'll go help look, is, oh god, no. Because as any fan of One Piece can tell you, Zoro gets lost exceedingly easily, and that's just hilarious, and it's just funny. Like, all of them are just like, yeah, no, we know how horrible you are with directions. You could walk in a straight line and still get lost. You can walk down a corridor that has no doors. It's a straight corridor, and somehow you will end up in like Timbuktu. How you got out of there, I have no idea, but that's what happened. That whole thing. A side note, I have not played One Piece Odyssey yet. I don't have a game system set up that I would want to play it on anyway. At some point in time I might play it, but it's not high priority on my list of stuff to play. But I know that like if you play as Zoro, that there's no map, which is just funny. But yeah, it's like that's happening there. And then we go into the Bonnie and Kuma stuff. So we see that Bonnie seems to have been pulled into the memory bubble. Now, whether or not she can like choose like the order that she sees these memories in is a little bit left up for debate, but she seems to be seeing something from when Kuma was a kid. And we see Kuma in the same way that like Oda drew him in like the SBS, where he's like this little kid that looks pretty poor and has like this book that he's reading. Although the one that we see in that little like sketch that he drew at least seems somewhat happy compared to the one that we see in this flashback, because this flashback of Kuma just looks so sad, because Kuma is in a very bad place. He has apparently been beaten by whoever it is that's in charge of this area, giving off the vibe of, slaves, like celestial dragon level slaves, possibly. Maybe not quite that high, but we do see celestial dragons in this flashback. Um, we see that there's this other group of people that showed up that seem to be, like a little bit older than Kuma, and they're like, you have to come back because you ran away, and if you don't, they're going to punish all of us. Um, and Kuma is just like, Kuma is basically begging because he would rather die than go back to where he was, with as horrible as whatever those situations are. Again, that is, we see this happen with the slaves in One Piece, where they're just like, screw that. I don't care if this color is going to blow up and kill me. I'm not going back to where I was. I'd rather die. And we see that happen with the slaves several times. We see that at Sabaody, I believe, with at least one of the slaves. And Fisher Tiger probably figured out the same thing when he was escaping Marijois, all those years ago. Hi. I love you. And Kuma is apparently like dragged back, and then we see that he's just crying more, and this is where we see the celestial dragons, and he's begging for help to be saved. So I don't know if this is implying that Kuma at some point was a slave of the celestial dragons, or because of other warlords, we know that Boa had been a former slave as well, so that Hancock and her sisters were former slaves, so that's not a surprise. Also, we just don't know if, we know that Kuma at some point was the king of the Sorbet Kingdom, but again, we do not know if that was a role that he like married into, or if he like overthrew the previous people that these people might be referencing. We don't know. Again, we'll hopefully get some more of that flashback. We see Bonnie like either forces herself out of the memory or is forced out of the memory. She tried to interact with the memory, but she couldn't do it. So I'm thinking it's on like a similar level of like the pensive in Harry Potter, where like you can witness this memory and move around in the memory to a degree, but you can't affect it. As in, like, she wanted to go and like try to comfort her father, but she couldn't do that because this is something that's already happened, and it's not something that she can actually change. She can't interact with it fully. So we see her like get kind of forced or removes herself from the memory world, and then she's crying and everything like that because she saw what happened to her father. We saw bits of it, but she's probably seen a bit more, and she's, she remarks that her resolve isn't strong enough to see this, but she has to see it. She makes herself apparently go back in to the memory world because she's like, if I don't do this, if I don't see this through, I'll never understand what my father was trying to do, what my father wanted. So, I understand where she's coming from with that. It's like, if I don't make myself see what happened in his own eyes in his own life, I'll never understand why he let Vegapunk turn him into this thing, why he let Vegapunk why he put his memories into this bubble in the first place. I'll never understand that if I don't at least try. Also, it does not appear that if you touch the bubble, it pops. I would assume that there's slightly different properties to this bubble as opposed to like the air bubble attacks that Kuma has done that we've seen Kuma do in the past. So we'll see how that goes. Also, while we see some of this, we see the PX0, the Kuma's body, like climbing the red line more. So we'll see how that's those parallels are going to keep playing out. Moving on, there at one point in time we see Pythagoras going around because like Pythagoras is out trying to find Vegapunk. We only saw like the baby Vegapunk version and like a slight little like trying to prevent Bonnie from going into the memory world bit. But there wasn't really too much else. We haven't seen him. Also, we don't even know if the other Vegapunks know that he's been turned into a baby at this point in time. I guess, so side note, a quick way that that Vegapunk could like let the others know where he is would be, I would assume, if he like connects himself all the way back to Punk Records and just like does like a upload of like, this is where I am, and like it just sends out like a message to all of the satellites at the same time, and then they can go and find him. Don't know if that's the case or not, but Pythagoras is out trying to find Vegapunk, and then there ends up being an explosion that seems to be where Pythagoras was, because we hear like this clink and then a click and then boom. So I hope Pythagoras is okay. We'll see how that goes. Moving on to the last bit that we have in the chapter. So, we get Morgans in this chapter, big news Morgans. So in his flying teapot balloon thing, newspaper headquarters, whatever the case you want to call it, I like the design. He's listening in on these different transmissions from like Egghead about Vegapunk and Luffy and stuff that's going back and forth between them and the world government. Probably like the CP0 agents updating, you know, the additional CP and stuff like that about what's going on. Possibly in communication with like Kizaru and like his fleet that's on his way there. So there's at least, you know, Morgans is like listening in on that. Whether or not Morgans is like within that exact vicinity, or if he's just like close enough in range to like pick up on that information, pick up on those transmissions, it's a little bit left up for debate. As we know, there are different, you know, snails and stuff like that that you can use to like, you know, hijack people's conversations and listen in on stuff. We know that the world government has access to all this stuff. Probably Big Mom had access to some of this stuff as well, considering her information network. Also, Morgan's having this information is also not surprising at all. Having this type of, you know, eavesdropping, listening, stuff like that. Again, not surprising at all in the slightest. Having spies in different areas possibly as well that he pays. So those parts are not surprising at all. Vegapunk is also, you know, he wants to have like this headline that is, you know, talking about like Luffy being the one to, you know, take Vegapunk and such. He also makes a comment about like he sends one of his like people to go and like get money from the world government and I'll print that headline so it'll make them look better, as opposed to world government wants to kill famous scientists for no freaking reason because he found out the bad stuff they've done. That would not be a good headline. So Morgans also points out that he definitely knows about what happened with O'Hara and the Buster Call 22 years ago, which again, that makes sense. We don't know when the World Economic Journal started or the World, you know, the economic thing. I don't know if we ever get an exact answer of how long that's been going on. How long that specific journal has, that specific newspaper has been going on. I'm kind of working on a video where I want to talk about Morgans and the news and the World Economic Journal. I've been working on that for a little bit. That's probably not going to be out this week, but that might be out soon, particularly if we get some more information in another chapter, if we see Morgans again. And such, but like I kind of wanted to talk about him anyway, and the way that he's kind of like spinning journalism in one piece, which I will get to in a moment. But you know, so Vegapunk basically points out the fact of like it's one thing for them to like blow up O'Hara and claim that it was like the, you know, the devils, the demons of O'Hara, the librarians that wanted that, you know, that they found this plot so they had to destroy the island and kill everybody that was on the island, including the civilians. It's another thing for the world government to try to just like erase Vegapunk with everything that he's done for the world. So that's a bit of a different story there. And then we cut to, yay, we see Vivi! She's alive! Somehow she's with Morgans. And then we see Wapol. Boo! I literally have that in my notes. Vivi! Yay! Wapol! Boo! So we see Vivi and Wapol. Wapol we know was at the Reverie. We saw him there. He interacted with, you know, Vivi and with Dalton and Kureha and all that. Just being the gritty, you know, prick that he is. We don't see his wife. We don't see Kinderella, I believe is her name. We don't see her anywhere. So the question is, okay, Vivi somehow probably stowed away with Morgans. Either Morgans is like, you know, he printed the headline about what happened with like Sabo and her father, you know, Sabo and Cobra and stuff. It appears like Sabo killed Cobra. And maybe he printed that, and then maybe Vivi told him, no, that wasn't what actually happened. But he's like, I can't go back on that. I already printed the headline. It's fine. Um, or is it, he like saved Vivi for a different reason? Had she like snuck in there at some point in time itself? Also, why is Wapple here? I don't know why Wapple is here. Unless they intend to like just basically like drop him off with Vegapunk and it's just like, here, make your freaking Wapple medal. I need more of it. I guess that's a possibility, but again, I don't know. Also, Vivi apparently has fangirls on Morgan's staff because several of them are in the background, like, oh, she burned my clothes. I'm so happy. So it's just like we get that little bit where we just see like them in the background, like, yay, they should. Vivi has fangirls, which this does not surprise anybody. Vivi is awesome. Um, Also, Morgan's points out that like Vivi has been like up until yesterday she was like bawling her eyes out. I'm like, well, in all honesty, her father was murdered most likely in front of her um by the world government, and then the brother of one of her friends was accused of being the one to kill him, and that's not true. So yeah, Vivi crying her eyes out is perfectly understandable. um so there's that. But also we get the moment where like not Vivi's like, Luffy would not do that. He would not um you know he would not hurt Vegapunk. That's not in Luffy's prerogative. And again, pretty much everybody that knows the Straw Hats well enough, like if the headline is Luffy kidnaps Vegapunk, Straw Hat Luffy Yonko kidnaps world famous scientist Vegapunk, whatever the case may be, most of them are going to be like, okay, well, that doesn't add up. So there must be something that we don't know about. That doesn't sound like something Luffy would do. So there's probably that. Also, Morgan points out, yells at Vivi that it's just like, you don't know don't tell me how to do my job, woman, basically. And he's just like, his words are the things that like shake the world. And it doesn't matter whether or not the news is fact or fiction as long as it's entertaining. I'm pretty sure that this is a reference just in general to like how the world tends to act to the news, that it's just like, oh, if it's not exciting and entertaining and bombastic news, it's just like, I don't care, for the most part, for the news cycles and everything like that. um, Also, I did want to point out that this basically is a reference back to the old adage in regards to like newspaper headlines and stuff like that, with if it bleeds it leads. That's why if there's like murders or fires or riots or something like that, that generally those were the things that made like the headlines of the newspapers back in the 1800s and into the early 1900s and stuff like that. That those were generally the things that would like sell the newspapers, was like these big headlines. And such. And also it is kind of a callback to yellow journalism. Now, yellow journalism is a term that I know kind of goes back and forth a little bit. In regards to what it references. It references to either telling a story in a more truthful light, even if it is not good for the people that you're telling it about, or I don't remember exactly, or if it's the reference to you tell the story even if you embellish certain facts or embellish certain things, even if it's not true, to make it sell more papers. So, yeah, that's kind of stuff that I thought about with that. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where that's going. As I said, I don't really have too much else for this video for like going over stuff that happened in this chapter. Again, I'll leave much more of a full breakdown of the chapter to other people. But generally with this, I did want to say that I am kind of working on a video about Morgan's work, because like Morgan's is definitely this representation of the way that like the media machine works in One Piece, with the fact that he is the biggest newspaper, the biggest news setup in the world of One Piece. So if he prints it, that's basically how most of the world finds out about different things that are happening. That's how they found out that Luffy is now a Yonko, and about the Cross Guild and all this other stuff, and Buggy being a Yonko and all this other stuff. So it's like, okay, so yeah, I'm not surprised by that. So I am working on that, where I kind of want to do a comparison to that, between like not Buggy, between Morgan's and the way that, like the news world, the media machine works in, real life in our world. But I'm still working on how to do that. So we'll see when that happens. So that's what I have for this. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. There's at least a dog in the background, so you can see the puppy, who is very cute and fluffy. And I'm going to open the window for him in a second so he can have his window. So I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!